FMA or acting or any of it, if you guys have questions, I will talk about anything. Yes, nice young lady over here.
I read on the website that you had done Full Metal Alchemist.
Yes, and I see you're wearing a Full Metal Alchemist shirt.
Can you
Specifically talk about it?
Like what characters were you?
Right. Well, I'm in the original one, and I'm in Brotherhood for about 1.5 seconds. The character I played in FMA is called Marta, and she was a snake chimera. She was freed by Greed, and she was originally one of his group, but then bad things happened to Greed. Hopefully that's not a spoiler since the show's 10 years old. Anyway, but she was really like the one of his group that survived, and she went out on revenge against Kimberly, and she ended up finding out about the Führer's true identity. And she goes to tell Al, and then something very bad and extremely messy happens to her. And then she is not in the story. Yeah, it happens both times, but it's a lot quicker. In the original series, I was in it for like 10 episodes, but in Brotherhood, it was like, oh, who was that lady? She's kind of part snake. Oh, she's dead now. So, yeah, it was a little bit less dramatic. Did that back in, it was like 2005 when I dubbed that. Well, the first one anyway, Brotherhood, was obviously more recently than that. That was actually the second show that I worked on with Funimation. I thought it was weird, that guy, I don't know if anybody was listening to the little opening ceremony thing this morning. He was like, Tiffany Grant from Funimation. It's like, well, not really from. I mean, I've worked on about 20 shows for them. We're all contract, okay? So I don't have, I'm like a job that I go to that's like a 9-to-5 thing and sit in a little booth or a desk or something every day. My employment is like they call me up and go, okay, Tiffany, can you come in on Thursday from 1 until 3? All right. And so I get there at 1 o'clock, I go in the studio, blah, 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 3 o'clock, oh, I'm done. And then I go, and now I'm unemployed again. So that's how long my jobs last. It's like I walk into the booth, I have a job, blah, 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 blah. Oh, it's over. Now I'm unemployed. So that's how long it lasts. It's very, very brief. Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Just making sure. Sort of a two-part question.
Mm-hmm.
If I understand it, you guys dubbed the Neon Genesis series quite a bit before you got to the end of Evangelion.
Yeah, a fair bit. Yeah. What happened with the TV series, Neon Genesis Evangelion? When it was originally broadcast in Japan, it was not broadcast throughout the whole country. It was only broadcast on certain stations. But about like halfway, 3/4 of the way through the original television run in Japan, which was in 1995, this is the 20th anniversary, it started kind of getting some traction. Like, oh, there was some, oh, what's that? Ooh, Ava, that sounds cool. Weird, different. Ooh, ah. And so then, after it had run that first 26 weeks, it got televised again in Japan throughout the whole country. Now, when ADV was negotiating to get the rights to the TV series, it was in that initial run. So when we were recording the home video version of Ava in starting like the fall of '96 through about the fall of '97 is when we were recording on it. It wasn't out, the home video version came out in the US before it came out in Japan. And so when it came out in Japan, I mean, if you've seen those last few episodes, they ran out of money. It was not like an artistic choice. They flat ran it. They had no money left. That's why they look that way. Anyway, so suddenly, guess what? It's a success. And so now, when they go to put it out on home video in Japan, and by which I mean video cassette tapes, when it came out there, they were like, oh, well, let's go back and put all this other stuff in it. And so there was all of this extra footage that ended up many years later being released in the US as the director's cut footage, because there was all this extra stuff. So when ADV originally was negotiating, they were negotiating for this TV show, this exact 26 episodes that was airing at that time. That's what they were negotiating for. So then later, when it came out on home video in Japan, first of all, it had all this extra stuff in it. Second of all, then kind of tied into the rights with all of that, they released these 2 movies, this Death and Rebirth, which is kind of like a recap of the last few episodes, and then End of Ava, which is just an alternate ending of the series, of the story. And so that was all completely separate. So then all of that stuff was in limbo for a few years. And then finally a company called Manga Entertainment got the rights to Death and Rebirth and End of Evangelion and released that in the US in like 2001. So there was a gap there of about 4 years from when those 2 things, those 2 projects were done. And then it wasn't until the platinum version came out, I think in 2004, that finally ADV was able to get that director's cut footage and release those, they released them first, they released them independently, and then they did the whole platinum release version that had the remastered video and the 5.1 Dolby audio. So that's kind of the history of how all of that came out. But that led to this very interesting phenomenon of, like I said, the version that got released here in the US, originally on videotape, and also part of it was released on Laserdisc, but not the whole thing. That was the original TV version. So all the Japanese fans who had their feelings of nostalgia for, I want to see the exact version that I saw on my TV, they were reverse importing from the US because the version that came out in Japan was not the same version. And people get really picky about that kind of thing. Like,
Star Wars.
We don't want all of this extra footage in there. We just want the original one that we saw. Whereas people over here were like, what about all that additional footage? Why can't we see it? How come they got it in Japan and we don't get to have that? So, it's like whatever you have is the thing that's what you want or you don't want, or I don't know.